Exam Stress Management, a guide for University of Buckingham Business School students. Now, just last week there was a story in the Daily Mail about a puppy petting centre that had been set up at Bristol University, apparently with the aim of helping to ease students' stress during the exam time and even maybe improve their concentration. So why would puppy petting help you at a time of exam stress? Well, it would be a good distraction from your studies, maybe if you were feeling overwhelmed. It would also feel comforting. This is a known benefit of having pets, and we can pick up an emotional cue from a sort of a happy or a relaxed puppy, and that will help us if we're feeling stressed. And it's known that pets and animals generally don't judge us, and so that can make it feel easier to be around them during times of stress. And when you look at the comments that readers have attached to this article, you can see reasons why it would be very appealing for students to be hanging around with an animal or a creature that is not judging them, because we can be quite harsh in judging people who don't appear to be coping with the situation that they're in. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about these kind of comments. They're from readers of the Daily Mail, who are not well known for their sort of liberal and generous thinking. Nevertheless, it's useful to know what is normal and what's not normal when it comes to coping with exam pressures. Okay? So if you feel under pressure, that's not a problem. We do want you to feel under a bit of pressure at this time. If you're feeling sometimes stressed, then that's probably not an issue either, as long as it is sometimes. However, if your stress symptoms are affecting both the way you prepare for an exam and what you do in the exam room, then that is definitely a problem. And then, even worse, if you can't stop feeling stressed, that's a serious problem, because we're not meant to be feeling stress for long periods of time. It's not actually very good for us. Stress is a response to danger or threat, so it comes with heightened alertness, adrenaline rushes, a sense that we need to sort of stand our ground and fight or run away. And that's great. It's enormously useful when it's just there for a short period of time to cope with an immediate danger. But if we're feeling like that for a long period of time, it can take a significant toll on us mentally and physically. So yes, you may just feel stressed, and it may be obvious that you're feeling stressed, but there can be some other signs that your stress tolerance has been exceeded that you wouldn't immediately pick up on. Things like just being more irritable or sensitive, or losing your appetite, or physical symptoms such as headaches and tiredness. Although it's important to note here that we're looking for things that are not usual for you and that you can't explain. So if you are regularly irritable, then that wouldn't count. Or if you have stayed up all night studying for an exam, then you know very well why you're tired. That's completely explained. It may be that talking to other people helps in some circumstances. So what are good conversations to have with other people at this time? Well, the bad ones are any that are sort of competitive ones with other students, trying to work out who's under the most stress, who's got the most on. If at all possible, try and avoid those conversations. But any time you can talk to somebody who you know is there to support you, then that's an enormous benefit. And also those conversations where you can just talk about everything you have to do, and just getting it out of your head has this wonderful clearing effect, so you can finally just see some sort of route or some path out of the difficulty or the fog. So definitely have those conversations if you can as well. And you don't just have to sort of tell your friends or whisper it in the ear of a puppy, because we have student welfare at the university, and their job is to listen to you at this time. And also, in addition to listening to you in a confidential and professional manner, they can help you by making recommendations that will sort of support you during this time if they feel that that's necessary for the situation that you're in. So you can refer yourself to them, or you can ask your personal tutor or your teachers to refer you. Either is fine. There are also ways that you can manage stress for yourself, both pre-exam stress, feeling overwhelmed before exams, and not being able to sort of cope with the actual exam environment or the exam event. Pre-exam stress will often manifest in a sort of study avoidance, and this is basically because you're feeling so overwhelmed by something or so threatened by something that you just can't face up to it. So if this is an issue that you're having, you might like to try a few tactics that many people have tried and found very useful. The Pomodoro technique is a well-known technique for replacing large, almost insurmountable goals with short time-based goals. So you're only ever focusing in a concentrated manner on your study for 25 minutes at a time, and then you're making yourself take a break at the end of that 25 minutes. And by doing that regularly and ensuring that you have the breaks in between, often what you can accomplish is a lot more than you would be able to if you just try to sit there and force yourself to study for the same period of time. There's lots of information about that online. You can time yourself with your watch or your phone, or just download an app. It's also known that the best way to keep yourself focused on your studies is actually to change your environment. So don't worry about focusing on changing your mindset. Change your environment. Make it more difficult for you to avoid study and easier for you to focus on studies. So get rid of as many distractions as you can. Make them 2 or 3 steps or actions away from you at any time. So don't study with your phone right next to you. Have it in a drawer, in another room, preferably with a lock and the key in another room as well. Or just go and study somewhere else where you know you won't have those distractions. And lastly, you can use other people to help you. So that might mean that you study in groups, but if you find that distracting, as many people do, it may be better for you to revise individually and then get together with your friends or even your family at the end of the day and explain to them what you've done. And if you've told them ahead of time what you plan to do that day, that adds a bit of extra pressure, so you have that sort of sense that you're not just doing this for yourself, but you're meeting other people's expectations as well. So if your issue is more to do with exam day stress, it's really quite important that you've prepared for the experience of sitting the exam and not just the exam subject material. And this would probably involve some sort of visualizing of yourself going through the process of doing exams and repeating that until you are desensitized to that feeling of being overwhelmed or anxiety or whatever it is that you're suffering. If you've never taken an exam and this is a strange environment for you, then I would recommend that you could think about visiting the room where it will be held in, and you can sort of so you can actually imagine yourself in that space. And lastly, do a run through. So make sure that you've had some practice of looking at an exam paper, turning it over, trying to answer a question under time pressure. Although sometimes these things may initially make you feel more anxious, the idea is that you, by repeating them, you desensitize yourself to them and they feel more normal and more manageable. Another thing that it's good to focus on at this point are the things that are actually within your control. So stop worrying so much about everything that's outside of your control and try and wrestle some of your mental time back for thinking about those things in your control. And one of the things that you can do is you can think about the kind of thoughts that are running it through your head. So it is normal for people to, if they're very anxious about exams or they feel they've done badly in exams before, to have habitual negative thoughts such as, I'm rubbish at exams, I always forget stuff, I'm not smart enough to be here. So the first thing that you can do, you probably can't stop yourself from having those thoughts, but if you remind yourself after every time you've had those thoughts that this is a habitual negative thought, that's the first step. And then the second step is to actually come up with some response or some retort. So, I'm not smart enough to be here. Wait, that is a habitual negative thought. Actually, I am smart enough to be here. I'm as smart as anyone else. Your breath is another thing you can focus on. So your breath is very powerful because it controls your heart rate, which controls a lot of your sort of feeling of anxiety or well-being that runs through your entire body. So by focusing on getting your breath under control, you make yourself feel better physically straight away, and that will help you to feel better mentally as well. An app I can recommend is called Breathe to Relax, and that's free, and you can download that whichever system that you're on. Another thing that I can recommend is using a short piece of mindfulness meditation. It's called a 3-minute breathing space. So what you do is you use a recording here to spend 3 minutes trying to sort of stop your mind from rushing and try and refocus yourself so that you can actually start to think again and start to sort of feel vaguely normal again. Franticworld.com has got a podcast that you can listen to here, but there will be other ones available online. And lastly, you still have some control over your well-being, even if you're feeling very stressed. If you think about the things that you do in your everyday life in all other times except maybe exam times to look after your well-being, you probably exercise and you would make sure that you sleep as much as you can. Now, often people stop doing these things when they come into an exam revision period because they think they don't have time. Well, there's plenty of evidence now, research is showing us that they're actually incredibly important part of both your sort of brain functioning and your mental well-being. So these are the last things you should be giving up, and you should be thinking of them very much as part of your revisions schedule. Your mind is incredible, and it is incredibly powerful. So you can use some of that power and harness it for your own good by using some of these tactics and by wresting some control back during what is often a stressful time for people. So I wish you all the best for your exams. If you want to see videos on memory techniques or on revision techniques, then there are a couple of other videos available.